If you're not tired of New Year's Eve stories yet, here's one that still visits me every December. It started like any other gathering. Me, my wife, her sister with her husband and kids, and my mother-in-law. My father-in-law had been out of the picture for years, so the old country house belonged entirely to her. We arrived early on the 31st. The yard was quiet except for the crunch of snow under our boots. Inside, the smell of pine and cinnamon mixed with the crackle of the fire. It should have been an ordinary night, but something about the atmosphere felt charged, as if the house itself remembered things we didn't. My mother-in-law was 49, full of life, confident in a way that drew attention without asking for it. She wasn't glamorous in a loud way. Rather, she had a calm, magnetic grace that filled the room. People often say time humbles beauty, but in her case, it only deepened it. The evening rolled on with laughter, old songs, and the clatter of dishes. Yet every now and then my mind drifted toward her, not out of attraction, but curiosity. There was something about her poise, her unspoken loneliness that felt mysterious. I wondered what stories she carried that none of us were meant to know. Later that night, while my wife and sister-in-law set the table, my mother-in-law called from the back room. "The sauna chimney's clogged again. Anyone brave enough to help before midnight?" I volunteered, along with my brother-in-law. She handed us an old key and led the way outside. The wind howled through the birch trees as we crossed the yard toward the small wooden structure behind the house. Inside, the darkness swallowed everything. The only light came from our flashlights bouncing off dust-covered shelves. "Wait here," she said, rummaging through boxes. "I'll find the cleaning brush." A minute later, she chuckled softly. "This place hasn't changed in decades. Every time I come down here, it feels like the house is hiding something." She wasn't wrong. The basement carried that kind of stillness that makes you listen for whispers. Suddenly, the old floorboard gave way under her heel. She stumbled, and I instinctively caught her by the arm before she fell. We both froze for a second, not out of embarrassment, but from the eerie silence that followed. "Thank you," she said quietly. Seems the house wanted to test our reflexes. To break the tension, my brother-in-law suggested a game. Riddles, to keep spirits light while we worked. The laughter that followed echoed strangely against the stone walls, as if someone else were laughing with us. When the light finally flickered on, the three of us exchanged uneasy smiles. Once the chimney was cleared, we headed back inside. The warmth of the house greeted us again, and soon we were sitting around the table as if nothing had happened. But the moment lingered, that tiny slip, that second of uncertainty. Midnight came. We raised our glasses, counted down, and cheered. Outside, fireworks burst across the frozen sky, painting the snow in colors that vanished as quickly as they came. My mother-in-law stood near the window, her face reflecting the light. When our eyes met, she smiled faintly, not in invitation, but in understanding, like two people sharing a secret that wasn't meant to exist. Later, when everyone had gone to bed, I sat alone by the dying fire. The house was silent again, except for the slow ticking of the clock. I thought about how fragile a single moment can be, how easily a misunderstanding, a glance, or an accident can blur the lines between comfort and temptation, curiosity and guilt. By morning, everything was normal. The children laughed, the coffee smelled strong, and the world moved on. But every new, older women always have a certain charm, don't they? She said quietly, almost to herself. Before I could respond, footsteps echoed on the stairs. My brother-in-law was back, holding a flashlight that cut through the dark. The sudden brightness snapped us out of whatever strange silence had settled there. We got back to work, lighting a candle and clearing the chimney until the sauna hissed with warmth again. The ordinary rhythm of the task was a relief. It pulled me back to reality. Soon, my wife's voice called from the house, cheerful and grounding. "Boys, to the table. That's enough work for one night." We exchanged glances, half laughing at ourselves, and returned inside. The air was thick with the smell of roasted meat and pine. Everyone was gathered around the table again, laughing, pouring drinks, celebrating. My mother-in-law sat at the head, her smile calm and impeccable, the perfect hostess, her earlier playfulness hidden behind a dignified expression. I poured 2 small glasses, one for my wife and one for myself. She clinked hers gently against mine. The warmth of the drink helped steady me, but my thoughts kept drifting. Across the table, my mother-in-law was laughing with the children, her posture graceful, her eyes bright, as if nothing unusual had ever happened in that cold, dim basement. Midnight came and went in bursts of laughter and fireworks outside. By 3 a.m, the house had quieted. The candles burned low, the children slept, and the only sound was the wind pressing against the windows. I stood for a moment in the doorway of the living room, watching as my mother-in-law rose from her chair. Her reflection in the glass looked almost ghostly in the fading light. She caught my eye, just briefly, and gave a faint, knowing smile. Then she turned away and disappeared down the hallway without a word. For a long time, I stood there, wondering what that look meant. Maybe it was nothing, just a trace of amusement after a long evening. Or maybe it was something I wasn't ready to understand. By morning, everything had returned to normal. The house was filled with sunlight and chatter. The night's tension dissolved like a forgotten dream. Yet even now, years later, when New Year's Eve rolls around, I still think of that quiet glance in the fading candlelight and the strange, unspoken story it seemed to hold. Year's Eve, when the snow begins to fall and the wind hums through the trees. I still remember that flicker of tension in the basement, not as something shameful, but as a reminder of how human we all are when caught between what's right and what's imagined.